Good morning, and welcome to Coffee Time with Kauffman, the comfortable place to talk about women's leadership. Today, we are talking to Christy Kovac about her unexpected path to being the president of Sheridan Construction. Hi, Christy.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Christy's first role with Chris R. Sheridan and Company had the title of Estimator over 20 years ago in 2000. She went on to be VP of Pre-Construction Services in 2012 and then on to President in 2016. Christy is a graduate of the Georgia Institute of Technology with a BS in Building Construction Management. Christy earned her MBA from Mercer University. Christy is down to earth, easy to talk to, and she knows construction. This is only a small part of what makes her story and success so powerful. Before we get into Christy's success story, my name is Maria Kauffman, and I'm a life coach. Today, I am drinking some wild raspberry coffee. What are you drinking, Christy?
I am drinking Z beans, processed and manufactured right here in Macon, Georgia, by a Mercer student in my nice coffee warm cup.
Love the cup. Awesome. So, Christy, tell us about what life was like for you as a little girl growing up that got you on this career path.
Well, I would say it's spending a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandfather was in the service, and he believed in, being organized and structured and having a plan. So early on, he suggested that I be an engineer because engineers make good money, and I needed to be independent and be able to have options. So when he first mentioned engineer, I thought the only kind of engineer I had been exposed to and was seeing on TV, a train engineer. So I thought he wanted me to drive a locomotive. So as I got to asking questions and understanding better, understood that it's more of a true engineering, science and math path. So he was my influence in applying to Georgia Tech. I actually did not start in engineering. I thought I wanted to be an architect and not an engineer, and that was close enough. I was at an engineering school, and I tried that for 1 quarter. It was on the quarter system, and realized I was too practical and couldn't dream it up. I could look at others and see it, and so the building construction program was in the School of Architecture. And a counselor said, you need to go try this out, take some classes. I did and fell in love with it. So that's how I came to be in construction management.
Oh, interesting. So interesting part of distinguishing between a little bit of that creative part that comes into some of the sciences. Mm-hmm. But before we talk about that, that must have been wonderful to have that influence from your grandfather.
It was.
Because that's typically not something that might have been the norm for grandparents to instill that kind of influence in their grandchildren.
Yes.
But he had a little bit of that service mindset. Mm-hmm. Do you have any anecdotal stories about memories from him that kind of helped keep you on that path? Was it some little story? Was it a constant influence? How did that work with you and your grandfather?
I would say it was a constant influence. Again, I spent a lot of time with them. My parents both worked, so I would go to their house after school. I would spend the summers with them. They would be the one to take me on vacation while my parents worked. And again, very structured, like you said, coming from the services. A couple of memories I have. One of them very clear. In elementary school, there were days where I didn't want to go to school, and I don't recall why. If there was a test or something I was trying to avoid, but I would say my stomach hurt, and my mom would say, well, you're going to your granddad's and he's going to ask you, are you sure you don't want to go to school? And some days I would say, okay, I'll go to school. I didn't want the wrath of granddad. Some days I would go, and he would say, you need to go to the doctor. I'm like, no, I just need to stay home for the day.
Oh, that's so cute.
So he always made sure that I was, doing the right thing. And again, his influence, he had 2 daughters, and both were good at math and numbers, and they both got an accounting degree. And so he saw, I guess me following good with numbers, and that's where the suggestion of hey, you should be an engineer, and you stick with it, get through school, and you'll be rewarded for it.
Awesome. So he noticed that. What did you notice maybe in elementary school? Was there a subject that you preferred over another?
Absolutely. Loved math, had really good math teachers. So probably a combination of, a little bit of talent and skill, and then good teachers. And what I didn't like was history and and writing. And
Right.
so, yes.
Yeah, same thing. And it's funny that you talk about, engineering and having that expectation that it was somebody to drive a train. That was the same for me too. And I'm not sure where that comes from, maybe from those early stages to try and explain some of these careers, in your young mind, you do get that influence. What was that conversation like then whenever, someone helped you find out, well, no, it's not driving a train, it's this whole different world.
Yeah, and it was not into the detail that when I look back in hindsight, it may have been more helpful. It was really just a clarity of, no, there is a career path where people design things, from electrical to mechanical, industrial engineer, civil engineer, but not any more detail than that. I really didn't learn that until I was in school and saw how all the, disciplines of design and construction came together.
So as you're kind of getting into the high school years and deciding on a track, and it sounded like architecture was something that you at least thought to pursue, what was that time of your life like, as far as maybe subjects, and what was helping you follow a path other than maybe obviously your grandfather's influence, but even academically, and then that application process and pursuing college education, or was the Georgia Institute of Technology, was that always a path that was maybe pre-described, or how did college go for you?
Yes, I think it was more pre-described, because again, having that engineering focus, Georgia Tech was the premier engineering public school. I knew I would be going to public school because my granddad actually helped pay my tuition. So again, that's the influence and why I listened, because he helped me. Parents were just, doing good, but just getting along, and he didn't want me to have student debt. So he says, you make good grades, you get into school, I'll help you get through without student debt. So again, Georgia Tech is the premier engineering school in Georgia. And to be honest, that's the only school I applied to. I didn't know that was the thing, and I didn't really talk to a counselor. I just kind of knew where I was going and was headed down that path. So that's the only school I applied to, not even thinking I might not get in. Had good
Wow.
grades, but my SAT score weren't high, and might not could get in today. But I got in, and again got through the school, and then realized, wow, I didn't even think that might not be a chance. I hadn't have a plan B.
It's probably better
Maybe.
hindsight, but that's fascinating. Oh, good for
Yes.
you. Now, when you applied, like you said, you applied for architecture and then
Yes.
changed inside?
That's right.
I guess whenever you're in those early years of college, a lot of the subjects aren't so different. So it was more
Right.
uncovering some of the differences.
That's right.
Yeah. So construction management, what was classes like? What was maybe even the ratio, of the number of men or women that you found in class? What are your memories from college?
Yeah, very low in the construction program. I think there were 3 females in a class of 30, 35. But what I remember is everybody being supportive of the females in the classes,
Nice.
and being supportive and working together to learn things together. The professors were good. That was a good experience.
Yeah.
Now,
So
I may be getting ahead, but coming out of that so the first job, you want me to head that way?
sure. Yes.
So Georgia Tech has a lot of employers that come to the school to interview, and I interviewed with a few and actually got a job in Texas. And that was the first time I had flown. I got to fly to my interview, and I accepted that job. It was with a large international construction company, and in Houston, Texas,
Mhm.
and worked there for a couple of years, and then came back to Macon, Georgia, my hometown. And it was difficult to get, being a female, to try to get into a construction company. So that's when I went to Mercer, and I said, well, I'll make it be productive. I'll go get my MBA. And I worked with an insurance company that was through my mom's connections in their accounting, helping with bookkeeping for a year, and just kept applying, and finally got in within a year with a company here.
Wow, that's interesting.
Mhm.
So that's quite a transformation and transition from Georgia to Texas.
Mhm.
But you were working for a construction company out in Texas.
Correct.
So
Yes.
you had something to put on your resume, you had
Mhm.
some exposure. So you come back to Georgia, work in a little bit of accounting, but
Yes.
determined. I love
Yes.
the determinedness,
Yes.
of some of these stories, right? So you were just going to wait it out with
Mhm.
total faith and belief that this is
Yes.
just going to open up for you.
That's right. It's not going to give up.
Not going to give up.
Right.
And you're back with your family at that point in time too, so that supportive environment.
Mhm.
How did you come across being an estimator for Sheridan Construction? Was not called Sheridan Construction back then. Tell us the story.
Correct. Yes, yes. So my first job was with a contractor that's no longer in business. The owner retired and did not transition it, but they hired me on as an estimator. Again, perfect fit because I was good at the number side of things. And Sheridan Construction, or Chris R. Sheridan, as it was known back then, was considered the premier construction company in Middle Georgia, and so everybody wanted to work for them. They were, small to medium sized company, and their preference on hiring was someone that had some experience and both project management and estimating. They wanted you to be dual role. So I applied twice, interviewed once, didn't, said, well, just hold on, not yet. We're impressed, but just not the right fit. And then they called me up a couple of months later and said, we may have an opening. Let's come talk again. So, and they hired me as their first full-time estimator. So they didn't ask me to come in and project manage. And it was actually good timing in our industry because it was when things were transitioning from all hard bid, where you put the numbers together, turn in a number, and the low number wins the job, to more of a negotiated process where by then you're getting involved with the design team early and providing multiple budgets along the way, which a project manager running jobs may not have the time to do that well. So it was good timing for me. I think good timing for the company as the industry was changing, and so that's how I started at Chris R. Sheridan back then as their estimator.
So you're determined to get the job. You finally get the job. I
Mm-hmm.
love that story. Just staying with it, committed to the process.
Mm-hmm.
Something opens up, but at that point in time, I imagine, how much do you even understand the impact of that change that you talked about?
Not much at all. I'm just, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm trying to figure it out.
So you're an estimator. Tell us about the support system that happens then in the workplace.
It was really good. Again, the leaders that hired me, wanted, some diversity, and actually they had a female project manager that was about to move to another area, so she was leaving the company. So they'd already been working in that way. So I think they were a little bit progressive, more so than anybody else around here. So she probably paved the way for me. I fit in well. I think it took time to earn the superintendent's respect and the other project managers, because I'm producing an estimate that they then have to rely on to build a project. And so it took a little time for them to see, okay, this is pretty good. And, again, build that trust. And I didn't know everything. So I would ask questions about what I didn't know. It just over time, it was, again, a great fit.
So I love this piece here. I remember as well, one of my first task that I was responsible for when I worked for consulting was estimating.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently I was actually pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it landed for me was maybe the way I arranged the numbers was not, I'll say, sophisticated. And I did have people that kind of supported me to kind of massage it so that it presented well, because they knew, from these outside disciplines that these larger companies work in, some of the negotiating conversations,
Right.
so that estimated, piece has
Mm-hmm.
that confidence, right?
Right.
So, but you're new. I found it interesting to kind of negotiate even myself, because I didn't have confidence in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about building this confidence and respect to earn with superintendents. Tell us a little bit more about that dynamic, because I imagine, from your perspective too, you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
So you're learning how to not only build the respect, but have the confidence in yourself. Anything that stands out that you can share with us about that tender spot?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of grit and just and hours and work and double checking. I can tend to be a perfectionist, but you also have a deadline to meet too. So it's doing the work, doing the quantity takeoffs, and then making sure, going back and saying, I'm gonna triple check this. Um, and then calling subcontractors for, the scope of work we don't do, like electrical and mechanical. Again, I was bashful as I came up and more of an introvert. So having to pick up the phone and call people was tough. It's like, let me just do the numbers in a room with a door closed. But so,
Yes.
So that's a part I had to learn and grow into also.
Yeah.
And I have a quick funny story. Then, talking about being worried about, are you missing something, that you made a mistake, because you don't want to make a mistake, or at least a big one. And I was on the job site with my boss at the time, and it was a project that I had estimated. And he, down here in Georgia, we have, a little bit of, I guess, slang in our words. And he said, well, who's doing the corking? I said, the corking? Oh my gosh. And I'm saying to myself, I don't even know what that is. I didn't price the corking. And so we're standing in his job trailer, and I'm just, wheels are turning, and we leave. And I asked my boss at the time, I said, what is corking? He says, he means caulking. I was like, oh, okay. I did pick up the caulking. I was like, here's my first big mistake. I missed the corking.
That's funny, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So what was it like then? Eventually, clearly, you earn the respect. Was there a moment in time where it was like, the transition, and how do you know that you earn the respect, or what was that like?
I don't think there was an aha moment. We It's just slowly over time, and again, trying to do a good job and not getting negative feedback, I guess, was my positive feedback.
Oh, right. The less negative feedback,
Yes.
the better I'm doing.
There you go. Now, I will say, this helped me at a time, and then helped me learn from my position as a leader now. One of a mistake I did make, I used the wrong scale on the drawing. Say it's at, 1/8 inch, and I used 1/4 inch. So thank goodness it wasn't a huge job, but there was a slab, and I calculated only half the quantity of concrete.
Oh.
And didn't realize that, again, a lot of times you don't get the feedback till the job's going along or the end of the job. So that could be 6 months or 12 months later. And then, hey, how did the budget turn out? Okay, I did pretty good, or I did okay. So
Right.
the project manager was about to order the concrete, and he noticed, and he came to me, and I was like, what happened? Because I always want to know what happened, so I don't make that same mistake again. And I figured it out, and I went and told my boss at the time, Chris Sheridan Jr., whose father founded the company. And I said, I made this mistake. And he didn't rant and rave. He just said, Okay, well, I'm glad you found it early because now we have time to, figure out how to overcome it. And I appreciate you telling me. And it's
Oh,
like,
wow.
okay, because I beat myself up more than he probably could have, but he knew, and so I see that in other people too. They just need to be aware they made a mistake, acknowledge it as soon as possible, and then recover from it.
And recover from it. That's pretty awesome. Nice to
Hmm.
have that experience earlier than probably later, and nice to know
Yes.
that you're in, not only you're supported, but it sounds like too, just having the awareness that it sounds like from his perspective, you caught it early
Right.
and there's flex and there's
That's right.
cushion.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, when we beat ourselves up, sometimes we don't even know that
Hmm.
there's that much play and that much forgiveness
Right.
in
Right.
things. Awesome.
Yes. Hmm.
Cool. So how was the journey from estimator to VP?
That was good. It was a matter of getting the workload that demanded, adding on some estimators, which then gave me the opportunity to have a leadership position. So we started with just me and one estimator who had been here for a while and was doing both project management and estimating and wanted to go just full-time estimating, which was great because he already had the experience. So it was just an easy team transition to then hiring two more to have what I would call a department at that point. So, and now we have a department of 6 estimators.
Wow.
And still keeping it. And that was the interesting thing too. The company at the time was a size that it maybe made sense to have that dual role. You estimate a project and then you manage the project. There's definitely advantages to that because you know it from beginning to end, but the disadvantage could be you need to close your door to do the estimating part. But yeah, you're managing jobs that have problems that need to be resolved. Um, so I think it's again been a good transition for the company, and we make sure that we have a smooth, what we call handoff meeting from pre-construction to operations. Um,
Awesome.
so
So it sounds, I mean, just by numbers. So when there's more employees, there's obviously more business. That's a natural progression to go in that direction. But also over time, give us a sense for the typical project lifespan. You talked
mhm.
about like maybe this 6-month lag between the time you estimate and the time, maybe construction actually happens. How many projects does the company do, maybe in a year, or what's the shortest, longest?
Mhm. So we're pretty diverse. We've got 17 superintendents who are the guys with the boots on the ground, we call them. So they're the boss of the job site. And so there are some, and we do a range of project sizes because we try to work with repeat clients. We were strategic about it, but we'll do a $10,000 job up to our largest project to date is $55 million job for a school system. And we don't just go out and seek, the small things, but again, for a good client, repeat
Huh,
client, we're going to do whatever they need us to do. And
awesome.
this company, we're actually celebrating 75 years this year.
I saw the mug.
That's my cup, yes.
Awesome.
And it is because we're working on some third generation clients
Oh,
who
wow.
Chris's dad worked with, the grandfather of the client we're with now. And that's one of, I believe, the reasons the company has been successful. So our projects vary from size. So in our larger, more complicated jobs, we may have 2 or 3 superintendents with a lead and then an assistant or an area superintendent. So, but I would say kind of our more the sweet spot, middle of the road is probably a $6 to $10 million job, and that's probably a 12-month project. Um, and so that's kind of the duration of the jobs. And so in a typical year, between the small and the large, we probably do. Um, Gosh, and I've got to add our West Georgia office, who is knocking it out of the park.
Oh,
But
yay.
probably yes, 30 to 35 projects in a year.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's impressive, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you get to see that project life cycle,
Yes.
iterations
Yes.
after iterations.
Yes. Because as we say here, even the small projects, you go through every step. So,
Right. Awesome. Cool. So as you're transitioning through these roles, what is something that you can share, with the audience about, do's, don'ts, how to's, any insight that you can share, especially I'll say for women getting into construction, so maybe some of the changes that you've seen on opening the doors and creating any kind of, creativity and diversity in the workforce.
I'm happy to see more and more women in construction, and I think again, I think from the few that I know have had a good experience. We bring a different skill and talent, and to the company, to the project. Detail oriented. We care. We have good interpersonal skills. So I'm excited. We had a female intern. We've actually had two, and I'm tracking both of them to get them back here full time. I'm not going to stop until they're here.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, that's so complimentary. It probably speaks obviously to their skill set and the work that they bring to the company.
But you'd asked about maybe advice as you're coming through. I think what I didn't expect, wasn't told, is that the higher you move up, the less you're going to use the skills you had and need to develop a different set of skills. It's a lot more like personnel issues, dynamics, leadership development. And so it's the balance of you're trying to develop yourself, but you need to help the people under you develop. So it's a balance and act I'm still trying to figure out.
Yeah. Oh, that's very humbling to know, because obviously you're very successful. And I know too, in some of those transitions that sometimes you get to like some of the work and it's your comfort zone. So to get out of your comfort zone is a stretch.
Yes.
But some people just have are more prone, I'll say, probably to those leadership skills.
Yes. Yeah.
And it sounds like too that Sheridan Construction supported you through those transformations.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll speak to the comfort zone one, if you don't mind giving you an example. Another thing with our industry changing from hard bid to negotiated work required interviewing in front of a selection committee. And as you can imagine, if you're an introvert and bashful, you don't want to get up in front of people and talk. You just want to say, just let me do the numbers again, and I'll
right.
So getting out of your comfort zone, that started back in probably 2002-ish. And I remember my first interview with the project team. I stood up and said some things and sat back down, and it was like an out-of-body experience. I remember being up there. I don't remember what I said. To doing that, like, again, I guess anything you practice and still get nervous, but a little more excited about it than, completely apprehensive about it. But go to project interviews and, tell them why we should be the selected one, why we're different. And so that's definitely, didn't know that going in school and coming through the job that would be
part of the deal.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And just like anything, right? A new skill can be awkward at first.
Yes.
So that is really important, especially moving through the leadership ranks.
Yes.
So thanks for that perspective. So what's it like to be the president?
It's exciting most days.
I have to imagine exciting. Help us understand what exciting means to you.
It's fun when you see the people around you, care and are wanting to do the right thing. That makes it worthwhile. So yes, having the right people and obviously in the right positions is important. That makes it worthwhile. Our people care. We've had people that have been here 30 plus years. We have some second generation employees. So that makes it easy. I tried to do it, surround myself with good people, like they say, and we did go through a recent tough transition, and I'll say, I remember we were part of a peer group that Chris, when he was transitioning the company, got involved in to help with that process. And I remember then the group telling him, hey, as a leader, you're supposed to develop people, but you're supposed to identify and remove obstacles. And I remember going, yeah, you need to remove some obstacles. And now I'm in this position, and here I am, doing the same thing. I need to identify and remove obstacles to keep us going in the right direction. So it's easy to sit and point what other people should do. When you're in that seat, it's hard.
It is absolutely hard. But let me just reflect on what you just said in a nutshell, is that the first thing that you said is that you have some gratitude that you're working for a company and you have this sense of that you care, that your employees care, that there's this caring piece.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's also a numbers part.
Right.
Where, I'm sure maybe even daily, weekly, you're tracking the progress and you're delivering on the results.
Yes.
So I just want to reflect and say, I love that you led with caring. It wasn't leading with, the numbers are looking like this.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end, you're also reflecting that in your role, you can't be the one, pointing the finger. The finger is kind of like pointing back at you, where, now it's my responsibility to remove the obstacles.
Yes.
That's pretty powerful.
Yes.
And you just look so happy about it.
Well, you have to laugh to keep from crying, right?
That is true too. So as you are clearly impacting the world of construction by being who you are and doing what you do, what are any hopes for a future in women's leadership? 100 years ago, women in the US finally got the right to vote, and we're now changing, the landscape in the moment for what women's leadership is going to look like 100 years from now. Any insights for us?
I mean, I think there has been and will continue to be a transition to more opportunities, and the more we step up and again act instead of talk about it, the others around us are going to see, respect that, and then learn to listen and ask questions, and be a team, and not a male versus a female. This is a team of people with good ideas.
It's just a team of people with good ideas. That's a pretty prosperous future. So thank you so much for that. Is there an inspirational quote that you'd like to share with the audience?
There is. I'm going to pull my phone up and read it here. I have a picture. It's from a friend who just happens to be on the Georgia Supreme Court, Justice Verda Colvin, who's here in Macon, Georgia. And she said, who believes in, again, supporting women, we go through valleys so that other women may see the horizon. We feel our way through the night so that other women may see the dawn. That's how we can clap for others, even as we wait our turn.
Wow.
She's good.
She is good. And that is absolutely a beautiful inspiration to share. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So, Christy, I can't thank you enough for not only being on the show, but once again, just being who you are and doing the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for taking the time to help us understand a little bit more about construction and the unexpected path from going from estimator to president.
And thank you, Maria. I appreciate your time and inviting me here.
Thank you so much. Coffee Time with Kauffman is the comfortable place to discuss women's leadership, because I am on a mission to help the world discover the truth about what women are capable of. When you are ready for your leadership mastery makeover, go to mariakaufman.com and click on Consult a Coach, where you can schedule time with me for an empowerment session. But before I go, Christy, if people are interested in construction, in Sheridan Construction, how do they get in contact with you, and what would you love to see from the audience?
go to our website, SheridanConstruction.com, and learn more about us. My email address is my first initial last name, Kovac@SheridanConstruction.com. Would love to connect with anybody who has questions, wants to learn more, or has something to build.
Especially has something to build.
Yes.
So I will make sure that I put all that information in the show notes to make it easy for anyone to access and get in contact with you.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a great week. Enjoy your adventures and journey responsibly.